In 2013, Michael Dell stood on the edge of the most dangerous bet of his life. He was already rich, already famous, already the founder of one of the most recognizable computer companies on Earth. He could have stayed safe, but instead, he tried to take Dell private in a deal so risky it could have destroyed everything he had built. The company was struggling, the PC market was weakening, Wall Street doubted him, and Dell was about to borrow billions to fight for control of his own name. The gamble was simple to describe and terrifying to execute. Dell wanted to buy back the company he founded, pull it away from public markets and rebuild it without quarterly Wall Street pressure. But the price was enormous. The deal required heavy borrowing, private equity backing, and total conviction. If the business kept weakening, the debt could become a chain around his neck. If the turnaround failed, Michael Dell would not just lose money, he could lose his legacy. Then the enemy arrived. Carl Icahn, one of the most feared activist investors in America, bought into Dell and attacked the deal. To Icahn, Michael was trying to buy the company too cheaply. To Michael, Icahn was threatening the only plan that could save it. Suddenly, this was no longer just a financial transaction. It became a public corporate war between a founder trying to regain control and a raider trying to break the deal open. The fight was brutal because Dell was no longer the unstoppable company people remembered. For years, Dell had dominated by selling computers directly to customers. But the world had changed. Smartphones were rising, tablets were eating attention, cloud computing was reshaping enterprise technology. Cheap hardware alone was no longer enough. The machine that once made Dell powerful was becoming a trap. Michael had to answer one terrifying question. Can the founder save the company after the market stops believing? This is where the story becomes more than a tech biography. Michael Dell did not build his empire by inventing the personal computer. He built it by attacking how computers were sold. He removed the middleman. He listened to customers. He customized machines. He used negative working capital like a weapon. He turned supply chains into strategy. And decades later, when that model weakened, he had to reinvent the company before the old empire collapsed under its own history. To understand the comeback, you have to rewind to a college dorm room in Texas. Before the billions, before the buyout, before the corporate war, Michael Dell was a teenager surrounded by computer parts, screwdrivers, boxes, and opportunity. He was supposed to be studying pre-med. But while other students saw computers as expensive machines, Dell saw something hidden inside them. Price gaps, upgrade demand, and a broken retail system waiting to be attacked. Dell had been selling long before college. As a teenager, he noticed patterns most people ignored. He sold newspaper subscriptions by targeting people who were more likely to buy, like newlyweds and families moving into new homes. That was not luck. It was data thinking before data became a buzzword. He learned early that the customer list matters, the channel matters, and the cheapest way to win is to understand demand before competitors do. That same logic shaped his computer business. In the early PC market, customers often bought through stores, dealers, and layers of markup. Dell saw the waste. If customers knew what they wanted, why should a retailer stand in the middle? From his dorm room, he began upgrading computers and selling directly. No fancy showroom, no corporate tower, just parts, phones, orders, and a simple insight. Eliminate friction, and the price gets harder to beat. In 1984, Michael Dell formally launched the company that would become Dell Computer. He was young, impatient, and operating with a model that sounded almost too simple. Build computers after customers ordered them. That meant less inventory sitting around, less money trapped in unsold machines, more customization, faster feedback. The customer paid, Dell built, suppliers were paid later. Hidden inside that sequence was one of the most powerful cash machines in technology. This was Dell's first empire-building secret: negative working capital. In plain English, Dell could often collect money from customers before paying suppliers. That gave the company cash to grow without needing as much outside funding. Competitors had warehouses full of finished computers losing value every day. Dell had orders. In a business where components got cheaper over time, holding too much inventory could kill you. Dell turned speed into financial advantage. The second secret was customization. Customers could choose what they needed instead of buying whatever a store had on the shelf. More memory, different drives, better processors. Business clients loved it because Dell was not just selling boxes. It was solving specific needs. The company's direct relationship with customers gave it information competitors had to guess. That information made Dell faster, cheaper, and more precise. The third secret was discipline. Dell was not trying to make computers beautiful. It was trying to make them efficient. Every extra cost mattered. Every day of inventory mattered. Every supplier relationship mattered. This was not Silicon Valley romance. It was operational warfare. Michael Dell built a company around the unglamorous idea that the winner is not always the one with the flashiest product. Sometimes the winner is the one with the tightest machine. The strategy worked. Dell grew rapidly because the model fed on itself. More orders gave Dell more supplier leverage. More leverage lowered costs. Lower costs improved prices. Better prices attracted more customers. The flywheel spun faster. By the 1990s, Dell was becoming a serious force in personal computers. What started in a dorm room had turned into a direct selling machine that embarrassed older rivals. But fast growth creates danger. When a business model works too well, leaders can start believing the model is permanent. Dell became deeply tied to the PC era. Corporations needed desktops. Students needed laptops. Offices upgraded machines. The internet expanded demand. For years, the wind was at Dell's back. But every empire has one question hiding in the future. What happens when the thing that made you rich stops being enough? The warning signs came slowly, then all at once. Consumer taste shifted towards smartphones and tablets. Enterprise technology moved toward cloud, software, services, and storage. Hardware margins compressed. Competitors got better. The direct model was still useful, but it was no longer enough to define the future. Dell had mastered one version of technology. Now the market was asking for another. Public markets made the pressure worse. Every quarter became a test. Analysts wanted growth, margins, and clean answers. But deep transformation is messy. It requires investment, patience, and decisions that may look ugly before they look smart. Michael Dell believed the company needed to change away from the spotlight. Wall Street wanted visible proof. That conflict set up the 2013 buyout war. Taking Dell private was not just a financial maneuver. It was a statement. Michael was saying the market misunderstood what the company needed to become. He wanted freedom to restructure without being punished every 90 days. But that freedom came at a brutal cost. Debt, scrutiny, and the risk of being wrong in private after fighting so hard to escape public judgment. Carl Icahn saw the deal differently. He argued shareholders deserved more. He attacked the buyout, challenged the price, and turned the process into a public fight. Icahn was not sentimental about founders. He was famous for pressure, disruption, and extracting value. For Dell, the company was personal. For Icahn, it was capital. That difference made the battle feel almost theatrical. Michael won. The buyout went through. Dell became private, but victory did not mean safety. Now the company had to prove the plan. The PC market was still tough. Debt still mattered, competition still existed, and the clock was ticking. A founder can win control, but control is only valuable if he knows what to do with it. Dell needed a second act large enough to change the company's destiny. The answer was enterprise technology. Dell needed to move beyond consumer PCs and deeper into the infrastructure businesses powering corporations. Servers, storage, virtualization, cloud, security, and data centers. This was less visible than laptops on a desk, but far more strategic. The future of computing was not only in the device people touched, it was in the machines, software, and networks behind everything they used. Then came the move that stunned the tech world. Dell agreed to buy EMC in a deal valued around $67 billion. It was massive, complicated, and loaded with risk. EMC was not just a storage company. Hidden inside it was VMware, one of the most important virtualization businesses in enterprise technology. To outsiders, Dell was taking on another mountain of debt. To Michael, he was buying the infrastructure backbone of the future. The acquisition looked insane to skeptics. Dell had already gone private with debt. Now it was adding one of the largest technology deals ever attempted. But Michael was not trying to win headlines. He was trying to reposition the company around corporate infrastructure at a scale few rivals could match. If the plan worked, Dell would no longer be just a PC company. If it failed, the debt could suffocate the empire. This was Michael Dell's pattern, repeated at a larger level. In the dorm room, he removed the middleman between customer and computer. With EMC, he tried to remove the gap between hardware, storage, virtualization, and enterprise demand. He was building a stack. PCs were only one layer. Servers were another. Storage was another. Software and virtualization made the stack more valuable. VMware became the golden piece of the puzzle. Virtualization allowed companies to run more efficiently by separating software environments from physical machines. That sounds technical, but the business meaning was simple: more flexibility, better utilization, and huge enterprise value. EMC's hidden jewel gave Dell strategic optionality. It was not just buying revenue, it was buying a lever that could reshape the balance sheet later. The years after EMC were about execution. Debt had to come down, assets had to be integrated, investors had to be convinced. The company had to keep generating cash while transforming its identity. This is the part of business documentaries often rush past, but it is where empires are really built. Not in the announcement, not in the press release, in the grinding years after the cameras leave. Dell used cash flow, restructuring, asset moves, and eventually the value of VMware to strengthen the company. What once looked like a dangerous debt-loaded gamble began to look more calculated. But it was not painless. Transformations at this scale never are. Businesses shift, people leave, divisions change. Debt creates pressure. Every decision has consequences. The genius is not avoiding pressure. It is surviving long enough for the strategy to work. Eventually, Dell returned to public markets in a different form. The company that came back was not the same as the company that left. It was broader, heavier, and more focused on enterprise infrastructure. The founder had used the private years to reshape the machine. That is the irony. Wall Street pressure helped push him out. But the transformation he made away from Wall Street gave him a stronger story to bring back. The modern Dell empire is not just about laptops. It sits inside data centers, corporate IT budgets, enterprise servers, storage systems, and infrastructure decisions that ordinary consumers rarely see. That invisibility matters. The most powerful tech companies are not always the ones with the most glamorous consumer product. Sometimes they are the ones buried inside the systems that keep businesses running. This is why Michael Dell's story is misunderstood. People remember the dorm room and the direct PC model. But the bigger lesson is reinvention. A founder built one machine, watched the world change, fought investors, took back control, borrowed heavily, bought a giant, and rebuilt around a new technology stack. That is not a smooth success story. It is a story of risk layered on risk. There is a dangerous lesson here for founders. The thing that makes you successful can later trap you. Dell's direct PC model was brilliant, but the market moved. If Michael had clung to the old identity, Dell could have become another fading hardware name. Instead, he made a harder choice. Protect the core long enough to fund the future, then use the future to redefine the core. There is also a lesson for investors. Public markets can be right about pressure and wrong about timing. Analysts could see Dell's problems clearly. The PC market really was under stress, but markets often struggle with messy transformations because they demand proof before the proof can exist. Michael Dell's private gamble was a bet that long-term control was worth more than short-term approval. For competitors, Dell's comeback showed that old companies are not automatically dead. They are dangerous if they still have cash flow, customer relationships, operational discipline, and a founder willing to make unpopular moves. The market loves clean narratives. Old versus new, hardware versus cloud, winner versus loser. Real business is messier. Sometimes the old player survives by becoming the infrastructure behind the new world. But the story is not pure hero worship. Dell's strategy depended on debt, timing, asset values, and execution. Heavy leverage can make a genius look bold when it works and reckless when it fails. The EMC deal could have become a disaster if cash flow weakened or the market turned badly. That is the truth about empire building. The line between visionary and gambler is often visible only afterward. The dorm room story makes the ending feel simple, but it was never simple. A screwdriver and $1,000 may start a company, but they do not build a $200 billion empire by themselves. The real ingredients were pattern recognition, cost control, supply chain discipline, customer focus, timing, risk tolerance, and the willingness to destroy your own old story before the market does it for you. That is why Michael Dell is different from many tech founders. His genius was not theatre. It was systems. He did not need to be the loudest personality in the room. He understood channels, costs, inventory, and customers. Then later, he understood that the company had to move deeper into enterprise infrastructure. The public saw computers. Dell saw flows: cash flow, component flow, data flow, and demand flow. The most addictive part of this story is the reversal. The company that once disrupted computer retailers became the company being disrupted. The founder who once used a dorm room to attack an industry later used debt and acquisitions to protect an empire. The teenager who sold directly to customers became the billionaire negotiating with banks, activists, and global technology giants. The scale changed. The core instinct did not. Every major chapter asked the same question in a different form. Can you remove the middleman? Can you use speed as advantage? Can you survive the decline of your original market? Can you take control when outsiders doubt you? Can you borrow enough to transform without drowning? Can you buy the future before competitors understand what you are buying? Dell's empire was built by answering yes at moments when no looked safer. That does not mean every gamble was destined to work. It means Michael Dell understood that standing still can be riskier than borrowing, fighting, or buying. The safest-looking path can become the slow death path if the industry is changing underneath you. In technology, comfort expires quickly. Dell survived because its founder treated comfort like a warning, not a reward. From the outside, the Dell story looks like a clean arc. Dorm room, computers, billionaire, comeback. But underneath, it is a story about business model design. The direct model created the first fortune. The private buyout created space. The EMC acquisition changed the company's center of gravity. VMware unlocked value. And the modern Dell empire became proof that reinvention is not a slogan. It is a financial structure. Michael Dell did not build a $200 billion empire from a dorm room because he had the best computer idea. He built it because he saw the hidden economics behind the product. He saw the customer channel, the cash cycle, the supply chain, and later, the infrastructure layer beneath modern business. The screwdriver was only the symbol. The real weapon was the model. And the uncomfortable question is this: how many empires are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice the broken system everyone else accepts? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed the story of how Michael Dell built a $200 billion empire from a dorm room, then you'll love the story of the $70 million tunnel heist that shocked the world. Click the video on your screen now. I'll see you there.